Insecurity is something we all feel at times, though some have learned to hide it better than others. But instead of asking why we feel it so often, maybe we should first ask, what is it really? We tend to see insecurity as a flaw, a sign of weakness, or something we need to fix before we can move forward in life. But what if that idea is based on a misunderstanding? Not just about the feeling itself, but about how our inner system is actually trying to help us. The body, after all, is intelligent. Every emotion has a reason. Every response is rooted in something it has learned to protect. Insecurity isn't a malfunction. It's a tool. A form of inner signaling that arises not to paralyze us, but to point out where things feel uncertain, where we lack familiarity, or where something within us needs more attention, more practice, or more clarity. As children, we rarely experienced insecurity in the same way. We didn't yet have an internal image of ourselves that could be judged. We just followed what felt joyful. We weren't yet concerned with being good enough, because the entire concept of good or bad hadn't been projected onto us. There was no belief system yet, no measuring stick to compare ourselves against. But as we grew older, and as judgment began to enter our lives, often through school, family, or social settings, something shifted. We began to notice when we were being watched, evaluated, or corrected. And with that awareness came the first feelings of contraction. Not because we were suddenly less capable, but because something in our environment was no longer responding to who we naturally were. It's in those moments that insecurity starts to form, not as an enemy, but as a companion designed to help you adapt, to protect you from rejection, and to offer space for self-reflection. It lets you know when something is unfamiliar or out of balance. But we were never taught to see it that way. Instead of learning that insecurity was a momentary signal, we began to see it as a permanent condition. We thought, this must mean I'm not enough. And because that thought wasn't questioned, we started carrying it as if it were part of our identity. That weight stayed with us, sometimes for years, and eventually became a quiet background feeling that surfaced every time we stepped outside our comfort zone. Imagine being in a classroom where every child is taught under the same method, with the same expectations, regardless of who they are, how they learn, or what they need. Some children may thrive because the system happens to suit them, but others will feel unseen and misunderstood. Not because they're less intelligent or less capable, but because their nature isn't reflected in that environment. When a child feels disconnected from the space around them, they don't usually rebel against the system. They turn inward and begin to question themselves. That's when insecurity becomes chronic. When it arises not because of danger, but because of disconnection. But even in that, the feeling still serves a purpose. It's trying to alert you to something that isn't in alignment. It says, this might not be your place, or this skill isn't developed yet, or even, this matters to you, and that's why you care. Insecurity isn't always meant to be overcome. Sometimes it's meant to be listened to. Think about someone who's deeply skilled at working with computers. In that world, they're calm, focused, confident, because they know where they are and how to navigate. Now take that same person and drop them into a professional basketball game, where they've never trained and don't speak the language of the sport. That quiet confidence they had won't follow them. Not because it's gone, but because confidence is situational. It grows where we feel safe, prepared, and aligned with what we're doing. Even Einstein, brilliant as he was, admitted to struggling with social interactions. In that domain, he felt uncertain, unsure of himself. Not because he lacked worth, but because it wasn't his strength. Meanwhile, someone like Justin Bieber, who spent his life performing on stage, may seem completely confident in that setting. Does that mean he's more confident as a person than Einstein? Of course not. It means he practiced confidence in a different space. And that's the point. Confidence isn't a fixed trait. It's not something you either have or don't. It's something that emerges wherever you've been given space to explore, to fail, to grow. Insecurity, in contrast, appears in places where that space was missing, or where we've been taught we're not allowed to fail. The problem begins when we hold on to insecurity as if it defines us, when we forget that it was always meant to be temporary. You wouldn't carry a hammer around all day just because you used it once. Yet many of us carry the weight of insecurity far beyond its purpose. Not because we need it, but because we were never told we could set it down. You are not your insecurity. You are the awareness behind it. And when you begin to see it for what it is, not an identity, but a signal, you create space to respond differently, not from fear, but from understanding. And that changes everything.